Ultimately, a loss is a loss, and this was a very disappointing one for the San Francisco Giants because they had a lead two different times against the Dodgers. But if we're looking for silver linings, you had some young players, Luis Matos with a 3-run homer, Heliot Ramos with 2 more hits, leading the way to nearly a win against arguably the best team in baseball.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and RotoGraphs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015. I've been hosting this show for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. Check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonmlb and use code all lowercase LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. And coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about the Giants losing a kind of heartbreaker against the Dodgers with two different leads. They led 3-1. They led 4-3, but ultimately fall 6-4 in extra innings. They did only have 6 hits to 11 for the Dodgers. Giants struck out 13 times. So did the Dodgers. Giants walked 4 times. Dodgers walked twice. And what stood out to me the most was that, like, the Luis Matos was called up. Honestly, with all the roster moves that have taken place recently, I think he was called up not yesterday, but the day before. So it's hard to even keep track. And then Jung Hoo Lee goes on the injured list with the separated shoulder, and we're awaiting news on that. And you may get that news. I may not give you that news, but it may come out between when I record this and when you hear this. And hopefully, we're hoping for the best over here, but that's a scary sounding injury, and I'm fearing the worst, but hoping for the best. I'll check Twitter a couple times while doing this episode just to see. But, as I said, and keep saying now that it's happened, said before the season, and now I'm saying now that it's happened, that injuries happen, and young guys that people wanted here to start the season, like Luis Matos and even Heliot Ramos and Marco Luciano, who hasn't been called up yet, but I would imagine once, it's kind of weird, like right now they needed to call up Jackson Reitz, the catcher, because Patrick Bailey is unable to go. But once Bailey is back, and assuming you keep Sable on the roster because of how well he's done compared to Reitz, you could see Marco Luciano being that guy who gets the call, but it's not entirely clear what they would do. But again, what stood out to me was young players performing, and I asked for some mailbag questions on Twitter, which we're going to eventually get to in full, but a lot of the early questions that were coming in were about, like, the young players and what would the Giants do if these guys continue to perform. Like Heliot Ramos has he had 2 more hits yesterday, another big hit that gave the Giants the lead. He stole a base in a big situation, and then Luis Matos just hammering a 3-run homer to left against Yoshinobu Yamamoto. That was exhilarating and just great to see. He did only go 1 for 4 in the game, and he had a chance to win the game in the bottom of the 9th and was unable to get it done. Casey Schmidt 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts, so he's kind of struggled. And so, at some point, do you see a move there? Maybe like when Bailey's back, do you try Marco Luciano instead? There's some young talent on this team, and one of the questions that I got just right off the bat from someone was, who has more upside, Heliot Ramos or Luis Matos? And to me, it's an easy Luis Matos as the answer. One thing to keep in mind is Heliot Ramos is 24 years old, and he'll be 25 in September. Luis Matos is 22 years old, and he won't be 23 until January. So Matos has that going for him, and Matos has done better than Heliot Ramos has in the major leagues in his career. Ramos has really struggled, played in only 40 games, and that kind of goes to show you that the team thinks that the ceiling for Matos is higher. But there's no denying Heliot Ramos has done well so far this season at the major league level. And most impressively to me, I mean, he's had a couple of really big hits, but most impressive to me was the game when he threw out two guys at second base and made an incredible diving catch. And so to see that kind of youth and athleticism coming through on defense and, running wise with the diving catch, and then throwing wise with throwing two guys out at second base, and then hitting wise. The thing is, it's a small sample. We're talking about 6 games that Heliot Ramos has played this year, 22 plate appearances. The strikeout rate is high at 36.4%. The batting average on balls in play is extremely high at 538, and there's just no way he maintains anything close to that. You're going to see at least 200 points fall off of that at some point, and hasn't hit for a ton of power. But again, we're talking about a small sample, and so you could improve in other areas, and this could all kind of come together for him. And just watching the eye test, I mean, he looks better, and he's continuing to get an opportunity, and so that's huge. And I think probably important, right, that this team at a certain point, they need to get some young offensive talent. Besides, they've had some guys like Patrick Bailey and Thairo Estrada, Lamont Wade Jr. When I talk about new offensive talent, I'm talking about kind of turning the page from those World Series years, because there's literally no one left on this team that was on any of the World Series teams. So this is a whole new era here, and they need young talent. And so they've got some of it. And when I say young, I do mean Thairo Estrada is in his late 20s and Lamont Wade Jr. is 30, so those guys don't necessarily count. Patrick Bailey, definitely younger. Logan Webb is young and talented. Camilo Doval. So they've got some young talent, but they really just need more impact position players from their minor league system. And so giving opportunities to guys like Heliot Ramos and Luis Matos via injuries, that's the thing. It's people wanted Michael Conforto traded away, right, to give Luis Matos a shot. But turns out Michael Conforto and his track record, he's been one of the Giants' best hitters when he was healthy before pulling his hamstring. And so even Mike Yastrzemski has kind of come back and ended up putting up solid numbers so far this season after a miserable start. I mean, if we were to narrow it down to... Actually, I mean, the numbers are still pretty bad for Mike Yastrzemski now that I look at them. He was doing better. I guess he's kind of fallen back. But again, track record. In his career, he's been 12% above average by weighted runs created plus. And last year, he was 12% above average and plus good defense. He made an incredible diving catch in right field that was huge in the game last night. Huge at the time. Ultimately, a loss is a loss, and it doesn't matter. But nonetheless, I mean, Yaz does more. It's not just about what he does at the plate, but there's still a lot to like about Mike Yastrzemski. And nonetheless, like I said, Conforto's injured, Jung-Hoo Lee is injured, so you're gonna see right now, and Austin Slater's injured as well. You're gonna see Heliot Ramos and you're gonna see Luis Matos pretty much every day. And so here's your opportunity. And so some of the questions I am getting is, what happens if these guys continue to do well? Are they just automatically going to get sent down when other players like Austin Slater or, Michael Conforto or Jung-Hoo Lee are ready to return? Are they just automatically going to get sent down? Or do the Giants consider keeping them up and finding another way to continue to give them playing time because they're playing well? So that's the kind of situation they find themselves in, and we'll get more into that and also discuss some big promotions that came out today within the Giants organization. So we'll get into all of that in just a minute. And before we do, Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Prize Picks, which is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way, take it from me, to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Spring training is way in the rearview mirror. Baseball season is in full swing. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond. For me, often, almost always, Giants players in your Prize Picks entries, whether it's strikeouts, runs batted in, first inning runs, whatever. Take your pick of more or less and add them to your Prize Picks entry today like I do. Best of all, Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including the great state of California. That is right. So you can play from California. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code all lowercase LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, as promised, I want to get more into the kind of thinking about, okay, what if Heliot Ramos or Luis Matos is just on a tear, and then some of these other guys like Conforto, I don't think Lee is coming back anytime soon, but Slater, what if they are ready to come back and Matos and Ramos are still performing well? What do you do in that situation? So I'm going to give my opinion on that, or my perspective on that. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, breaking down probably game 2 of this series against the Dodgers. This is one where I honestly conceded that you may need to win only one game in this series and then hopefully really take care of business against the Rockies, win at least 2 out of 3 against the Rockies, maybe sweep them. They have been really, really dreadful on the road. But yesterday was a big blow, because if you could just have won that first game and they had a 3-1 lead, they had a 4-3 lead, then you would be in a pretty good position to actually win the series against LA, which would be 3 straight series wins. And then with the Rockies coming into town playing on the road. So big missed opportunity, and there's no doubt that it hurts. But nonetheless, you could still win the series. You got 2 more games left, and if you win them both, you win the series. And crazier things have happened. The Rockies, who have been horrible, just swept the defending World Series champion Rangers. And just for example, baseball is weird like that. Also, I must let you know that Locked On, well, no, what I'm trying to say is, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Locked On is the solution. Do you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also a reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. And also a reminder about Postcast with Eric Engel. Now, I keep mentioning this, but I'm going to keep mentioning it until it's fully ingrained. I think it's actually now called Locked On Sports San Francisco. I've been saying Locked On Sports Bay Area, but Locked On Sports San Francisco is, I believe, actually the title of the YouTube channel. I was just checking it out yesterday, and that's what it was called. They may have changed it without telling me, which I wish they would have told me. But anyway, instant reaction after almost every single Giants game. Also Warriors and 49ers when they're back in season with Eric Engel. And you can join that conversation right after the game. And so that's where to go. Subscribe to Locked On Sports San Francisco and hit the bell notification and go live with Eric Engel after every game. And then that feed shows up on the Locked On Giants podcast feed, just not on the YouTube feed, but everywhere else, like Apple, Spotify, etc. So anyway, moving right along, the question about what do the Giants do if guys like Heliot Ramos and Luis Matos or Casey Schmidt or Marco Luciano if he gets called up? But, Nick Ahmed's probably not that far away. They did give out some medical updates yesterday, and I don't have those pulled up. I could probably find them pretty quickly, honestly. But, yeah, I'm going to maybe find those really quickly. Yeah, okay. So the medical updates are that Nick Ahmed, he's going to do light baseball activities this week, so he doesn't sound super close to coming back. Michael Conforto is rehabbing. That's not a super detailed update. Jung-Hoo Lee he underwent an MRI and is going to meet with Dr. Ken Akazuki yesterday evening, so we should get an update on that pretty soon. Another update will be provided tomorrow, meaning today, after Lee meets with team doctors. So cross your fingers on that one. And Austin Slater will start light conditioning this week. We know about Blake Snell, and Jorge Soler will hit in the batting cage today, meaning yesterday. So, the City Connects are back, by the way. So that's a good thing. We've got City Connect magic here. Let's hope that carries over. Giants put out a nice little City Connect graphic with Luis Matos highlighted. It's exciting to me. Like, even though the team is 5 games under 500 or whatever it is, I think it's 5, to see a lineup that features Ramos, Sable, Matos, and Schmidt at the bottom of it. I get it. Sable, you'd rather see Bailey. But Sable, he's done a nice job like the last 2 years. And so I don't know. I'm highest on Luis Matos, but I do think Heliot Ramos, what he's been doing, deserves attention. What he has done in AAA this year deserves attention. Also, Casey Schmidt deserves attention, and I think has a chance to be a good major league player. If for nothing else than for his defense, if he can just hit a little bit and be what he is defensively, then I think he has a chance to be a pretty darn good player. And so, he is 25. So I guess Heliot Ramos is still younger than Casey Schmidt, just to give you some perspective, just to give myself some perspective. But the question is okay, so what if Michael Conforto and Austin Slater, I think Jung-Hoo Lee is going to be out months, sadly. If not, I hate to say it, but this is the kind of thing that could threaten a whole season. So scary stuff, hoping for the best, but fearing the worst, and we'll await an update there. But it's tough. It is to be brutally truthful. It's tough because when you have a guy like Michael Conforto, for example, he's on a guaranteed $18 million contract. You can't send him to the minors. He's done well for you this season. What are you going to do? What can you do? You're not just going to cut him. You could say, you try to trade him, but I think that's a little hasty because say you trade him and then Ramos or Matos gets hurt, then suddenly you've lost both players, whereas Ramos and Matos can be optioned, and then you bring Conforto back into the mix, and then if Conforto gets hurt again, which has happened time and time again over the last couple years, then you still have both players instead of having none of them. I guess technically you've lost Conforto, but only temporarily, and so you've just thinned yourself out. And so, however, if you just perform at a level where you demonstrate that you truly belong and truly can make an impact, I think they find a way to keep you around. They find a way to keep you around, and it's usually by, maybe, I don't want to say, one of the Mets, I don't know what his exact title was, but general manager, it wasn't president of baseball operations, general manager, Billy Epler got suspended for a season for manipulating the injured list. And so I have talked before, people joke about phantom IL, but it is a serious allegation to accuse a team of using the injured list without a legitimate injury. And so I'm not going to sit here and say, you just phantom IL somebody to make room to keep these guys around. You cannot do that. Someone has to have a legitimate injury to go on the injured list. You can't just manipulate it like that. And if you do, the baseball world is on notice here general managers and presidents of baseball operations are on notice, given the year-long suspension of the Mets GM for this exact practice. So there's not much you can do, but also with Jung-Hoo Lee out probably for a long time, then at the very least, I think one of Heliot Ramos or Luis Matos is just going to play pretty much every day, because Slater is kind of a platoon guy, not an everyday guy, and they're giving Matos and Ramos more of everyday opportunities. And so it's basically a competition between those two. It's kind of how I see it playing out. And then Casey Schmidt kind of may enter a competition with Marco Luciano if Patrick Bailey is able to return. Therefore, they can send Jackson Reitz back to AAA, and then there is room on the roster. And calling up Luciano and having maybe Schmidt off the bench, defensive replacement, not that they really need it, or maybe you need it for Luciano at times in late and close games. Not sure, just to give guys like Chapman and Estrada and Luciano a day off, because he can play all three of those positions. And so I'm a fan of the roster getting younger. I think people have wanted that for a long time. It's just you got to protect your inventory. As we've seen, all these guys have gone down, and it's good to have that layer of depth, because what if this, like, the young guys were your top layer, and what if they all got hurt? Then what are you looking at? You know, who's behind them? They've lost like 7 guys in a week. Like, then who would be behind them? That's the fear. And because it's such a long season, guys do get hurt. And that's why you got to have depth and have optionable players and stuff. And so, you know, we're lucky they held on to all these guys, because these guys got hurt, and now they still have the young guys to call up in this situation, and they're going to get their opportunities. And with Jung-Hoo Lee out so long, I think at least some of them will get extended opportunities. And I don't know, right now Schmidt, you know, hasn't like played his way above Nick Ahmed, I don't think. So if Ahmed was ready to come back, they'd probably just option Schmidt and give Ahmed that job again. I think Ahmed has done a pretty nice job, and kind of as expected, good defense, not a ton with the bat, but still kind of grinds out at bats for you and gets you a big hit on occasion because of it. So anyway, coming up in just a minute, we're going to talk about a couple of other young players, but not major leaguers yet, but guys who are going to be on the doorstep of the major league after these recent promotions. Reggie Crawford and Hunter Bishop, 2 first-round picks of the Giants in Sacramento. We'll get into it in just a minute, and before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by Policy Genius. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Their proprietary technology makes it easy to compare personalized quotes and policies from top-rated insurers side by side. Policy Genius's team of licensed experts is here to answer questions, handle paperwork, and help you make decisions with confidence. They work for you, not the insurance companies. From exploring coverage options to making policy adjustments as your life changes, Policy Genius is your advocate at every step. And Policy Genius is committed to your information remaining secure. Your security is their priority. They use industry-leading security practices to help keep your information safe. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnMLB or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnMLB. All right, as promised, more focus on young players. I do, care a lot about the major league team, and like I said, I definitely think this loss was super disappointing. It would have given you a real good shot to win a series against the Dodgers. Still have a shot, but you're going to have to win 2 straight. The Giants haven't been able to win 1 straight against the Dodgers this season. They're 0-4, and this has kind of sunk them in recent years, has been performance against the Dodgers. And so you hope you don't go, something, what do they play now, 13 times a year? You hope you don't go like 2-11 against the Dodgers. Try to just compete and battle and scratch out a win here and there. And last night looked like it may be one of those nights, but it wasn't to be. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every dayers tomorrow. We will be breaking down game 2 of this series. Keaton Winn on the mound for the Giants, and for the Dodgers, they're going to go with Gavin Stone, who is naturally having a nice season with a 3.55 ERA for LA. So the Giants will have their hands full as Keaton Winn has struggled as of late and Gavin Stone has been doing well. And yeah, the Giants are indeed 5 games under 500. But man, that Luis Matos home run, it's like on repeat right now as I look at the Giants website. Great to see. And just, that was an issue for him last year, was kind of power, right? He hit the ball well and like squared it up a lot, but just kind of wasn't able to hit for power. Man, and seeing him fired up after the home run, that fires me up. And so hopefully more of that. Dodgers are a really good team, so to lose in extra innings to them, Giants played well enough to win, and they certainly are playing better right now than they did in the early part of that road trip. Won the series against the Rockies, won the series against the Reds, and then really had a chance to win game 1 against the Dodgers there. So it is what it is. But anyways, yeah. So I do want to talk about these promotions that are kind of a big deal. Reggie Crawford and Hunter Bishop, who we haven't heard from in a long time, the first round pick under this new front office, Hunter Bishop, he gets promoted here to AAA, and so does Reggie Crawford, who was also a Giants first round draft pick under this regime in 2022. So Bishop picked in 2019, and it's not like he was exactly tearing it up in AA, but it was his first time in AA, and he held his own there. He was about league average there, and I don't know, maybe their underlying metrics that they, I'm sure, have suggest that maybe he hit into some bad luck in Richmond, but he was healthy most importantly, and so going to AAA, it's a much more friendly, offense-friendly environment, and so we'll see what Bishop can do. So far, that his performance and injury track record has definitely been disappointing, but it is certainly worth noting that he gets the promotion to AAA, and they've got some holes to fill there in AAA. That's part of the reason, is with all the injuries to the major league outfield, they've had to dip into all of their minor league outfield resources as well, with Matos and Ramos coming up to the major league level. So Reggie Crawford also gets the call from AA to AAA after pitching just 9 2/3 innings in AA. Strikeout rate 44%, and mostly as a reliever. It's worth noting last year he made 6 starts, but only pitched 8 innings. So, in high A. In total, he made 13 starts and pitched 19 innings. So barely over an inning per start, almost 2, I guess. But this year, 7 games, only 1 start, 9 2/3 innings. But his strikeout rate in AA was a whopping 44.2%. So, I mean, right now, if you look at the Steamer projections for Reggie Crawford, they've got him at a 3.97 ERA at the major league level. And so this is a potentially impact arm. They've kind of cut out the two-way player thing, and they've completely cut off the two-way player thing, and he's just going to be a pitcher. And he's, last year he was coming off Tommy John, and so that kind of explains the low innings total. But this year, I'm not entirely sure what's going on and if the plan is to make him a full-time reliever versus a starter, but he basically hasn't been a starter. If I look through and see when he made his 1 start, it was his first outing of the year, and he went 1 inning. And he faced 4 batters, walked 1, struck out 1. So the fact that he started doesn't really mean much. And then he went 2 innings, 1 inning, 1 inning, 2 innings, 1 2/3 innings, 1 inning. So I don't know exactly what the plan is long term for Reggie Crawford and if they've given up on him starting, but right now he's basically just been a reliever. But the fact that he's promoted to AAA, 2 first-round picks promoted to AAA, is exciting. I think Hunter Bishop has a lot to prove, and Reggie Crawford kind of less so. And Reggie Crawford has kind of vaulted ahead of Hunter Bishop in terms of prospect status, but that doesn't mean the ceiling that Hunter Bishop has. Hunter Bishop, an outfielder, left-handed hitter, right-handed thrower. Reggie Crawford, left-handed arm, has been known to touch, the upper 90s / 100 plus with his fastball, and has a really good slider as well. Command has been an issue. Walk rates have been high, but electric stuff, and going to be in AAA, and so that's exciting, right on the doorstep of the majors. So I wouldn't be shocked to see, especially Crawford, at some point, not too far in the future, if he can perform well in AAA. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, breaking down Game 2. We also have a plan. I've been trying to coordinate a time to talk with Sully from Locked On MLB. If we do that, we'll also be kind of talking about the current state of the Giants, but it'll also be some big picture stuff as well. So if that is what comes out, don't be overly surprised. That is a possibility as well. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I cannot wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. Today, you are now Locked On Giants.